illustration that we put this there. To nail the gears and everything. Guys, this is
also announced we got Vacation Bible School meeting this afternoon at 4, so if anybody's interested and would like to participate, we would welcome you to be there. All right, on page 100, it's section 4, and it says parables give insight about his rule in the kingdom. All right, there's about 3 or 4 different things there that it tells that the parables tell you about as far as the kingdom. What does it tell you about the kingdom? What do the parables tell you about the kingdom? Huh? The Jews were looking for it. All right, it was to be expected. It was in the Old Testament, and they had read about it. It's on its way. It's coming, and they just didn't know how or when or what. Right, they were expecting really more of a earthly kingdom, a material kingdom, where they'd have a great king and return to the days of Solomon, where they were the greatest nation on earth. All right, what else? What else does it tell you about? What else do the parables tell you about besides the kingdom was expected? All right, it's spiritual. It's not material. In fact, that's really the central part of most of the parables about the kingdom, is that it's going to be a different kind of kingdom. It's going to be spiritual, not physical, not material. What else? What else is told about the kingdom in parables?
Start small.
Oh, yeah. It would start off small and grow to large, huge numbers or size. It would start off small. Okay? What else? Probably the most obvious one was the one we left out. What about the kingdom?
The gospel is for all.
All right, the gospel is for all. It is not, it does not distinguish between Jew and Gentile, rich and poor, slave and master. It doesn't distinguish, even man and woman. Women are Christians also, and have equal responsibilities to work in the church. They have their responsibilities, their abilities, and they'll be used just like the men. Yes? Anybody else say anything? Mark?
Well, one thing for certain is it also opens our eyes to the judgment to come, the finale, the grand finale.
Right.
And we've got to be prepared for it. But the opportunities are before that, and yet when the fate's sealed, when the deed is done, it's all over. Then we're God's to judge.
Right. The people in the kingdom, and especially the people in the kingdom, will be safe when that judgment comes. They'll be in the hands of Jesus. And to point out, and since we mentioned that, the king will not be an earthly king. It will be Jesus, and he'll be in heaven reigning. So all those things are told to us and explained to us and explained to the Jews, because the Jews did not really get the idea. So it's explained to them what the kingdom really is. How are we going to, let's see, how shall I say this? How are we going to work and live in the kingdom?
Are you talking about now or later?
Now. As we are in the kingdom now, the kingdom on earth, the kingdom of heaven, the church, how are we going to work and live in that?
According to the directions of the king.
According to the directions of the king, yes. He mentions down here being a faithful worker. And in fact, he says it's an urgency to be that. He portrays it as an urgency. Become a faithful worker in the kingdom. Live your life as a member of the kingdom. Okay, now let's look at one of these parables. Over on the next page, it lists a great list of all of the parables and where they're found. And then he goes into the probably most well-known one, and that is the parable of the sower. So I need somebody to read, and it's a 2-section read, so I could have 2 people. Matthew 13, 3 through 9. And then we'll skip over and read Matthew 13, 18 through 23. All right, do I have a person that would read 3 through 9?
And he spoke many things to them in parables, saying, Behold, the sower went out to sow. And as he sowed, some seeds fell beside the road, and the birds came and ate them up. And others fell upon the rocky places where they did not have much soil. And immediately they sprang up, because they had no depth of soil. But when the sun had risen, and they were scorched, and because they had not no root, they withered away. And others fell among the thorns, and the thorns came up and choked them out. And others fell on the good soil and yielded crop, some 100-fold, some 60, and some 30. He who has ears, let him hear.
Thank you. And then 18 through 23. Somebody will read those, 18 through 23.
Reader.
All right, Cheryl had volunteered for the first reading. All right, go ahead.
This is Old King James.
Okay.
Hear ye therefore the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and understands it not, then comes the wicked one and catches away that which is sown in his heart. This is he which received the seed by the wayside. But he that received the seed into stony places, the same is he that hears the word, and with joy receives it. Yet he has not any roots, but does for a while, but for a while, then tribulation or persecution arises because of the word, and by the word he is offended. He also that receives the seed among the thorns is he that hears the word, and the care of this world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and he becomes unfruitful. But he that receives the seed into the good ground is he that hears the word and understands it, and bears good fruit, and brings forth some 100, and some 60, and some 30.
Thank you. Okay. He presents 4 things you ought to consider when you read and when you're studying a parable. 1, what is the context? What is the circumstances? What is Jesus seeing in the people that they need? What's going on here? What is where? We didn't read these verses, but in verse 1 and 2, it says where it is. And then he talks about these people in verse 16 that we did not read, 16 and 17. So what is the context? What is the circumstance of this parable? Where is he?
Verse 1 is sitting by the sea.
All right, the city by the sea, most likely Capernaum. All right, what else? He's right there on the shore, right? Odd place to be to talk about farmland, but he's on the shore. It seemed like he would teach one of them about fishing or something like that. But he picks farmland because why? Why does he pick this thing? Why does he pick this topic, this subject? Yeah, they all had, even if they were fishermen, they had a garden. They knew how seed worked, and they knew how to pick the land that they would use for their seed if they wanted good crops. So they understood this perfectly well. It does mention in verse 16, but blessed are your eyes because they see, and your ears because they hear. They could see all this stuff and hear all this stuff, and they should be able to understand it. Now, second thing he says we need to do is look at the central meaning. What is the main lesson, central meaning of the parable? What is he trying to get across?
What kind of soil you need to be when you hear the word.
Yeah, what kind of soil you need to be. And that almost gets into the third question as, where are you in this parable? But first, what is the meanings of each one of the soils? Anybody want to take one of them and tell us the meaning of that particular soil?
This person that, I don't know what you want.
Oh, I want to go through each soil and say, okay, here's the place where everybody walks. Here's the hard ground packed where everybody walks. What is that?
It depends on their hearing, their heart, their attitude. It's an attitude parable.
So this hard packed ground is that hard heart, right? That heart that can't be penetrated. It's just too hard. The seeds, roots cannot penetrate the soil at all. It's going to be what? What's going to happen? The bird snatching. Now the birds are the devil. He comes along and carries the world, or whatever he uses, he's going to snatch that seed away. It won't really have a chance. All right? Mm-hmm.
About the way the seed is being sown, it's broadcast. And it's covering every type of soil condition, whether it's rock, dirt, good dirt, bad dirt, or whatever. And so that's the way the word goes out too, and the way the gospel is to be spread. You know, you can't necessarily just pinpoint one person and drop that little seed in there. We have to broadcast. And so the beauty of that message is that that everybody has an opportunity equally to respond in a certain way, depending on their heart.
I'm glad the way you said that. I was sowing seed yesterday. I was trying to get grass in my front yard to grow. I've got really rocky soil, so it's tough. But I was broadcasting this new fancy seed that's supposed to grow under trees because it's got a lot of trees, a lot of shade. But the idea was broadcasting, which means Mark said we have to broadcast. We can't plant it in rows. We can't pick our soil. Everybody gets a shot. It's fair. It's fair to everybody. Okay? Let's see. What about that other soil? Pick another soil. That's the place where everybody walks, the hard-packed dirt. What about another soil?
The soil that the seed rather that fell up on the rocks. It came up, but it withered away. They had no roots.
Right.
I don't think what people understand when they're baptized, that's just the start of it. They need to work to get the soil built up, to dig deeper, to get deeper, get rooted in the truth. Mm-hmm. But it came up, they didn't have any roots to be able to live.
Yeah, when I read the commentary, it said it was like a thin bit of dirt on top of this rock. It was a shelf of rock, and it was dirt on top of it. It wasn't really rocky like chunk rock, like little bits of rock. It was a piece of solid rock, and the dirt was right on top of it, so it was about that deep. So yeah, the roots got to a certain point, and they couldn't get any deeper. So, what kind of person would that be? How does he describe that kind of person? It gets the you in it. The third question is, where's the you? In other words, where are we in this parable?
Second one is one who starts off, you're a newcomer and you're all loose and you're ready to go, but then for whatever reason, you just keep reaching. You have reached a limit almost, like with this one, where the roots can't gather any more nourishment. That's this person. They're so closed off. They close themselves off at a point, and they don't grow.
Yeah, he emphasizes some emotional kind of person. The person gets, I think they used to say in the 70s, real gung-ho. He would just, be happy to, and great, and he would loved what he was doing. He just loved being a Christian, and all of a sudden, if it's just emotion, it's nothing else. There's no heart, no mind involved. If it's just emotion, what happens? Well, that next thing comes by, fired up on, and he's going to leave and go do that. It is just like the soil. It's a shallow type person, a person who, and probably you've had a child like this that just loves everything about something, and all of a sudden they're tired of that and they go to something else. Then they get tired of that and they go to something else. That's the kind of person we're talking about. So that's, yes, I love it.
It reminds me of just recently down on, I think it's 40, where they had a landslide. Okay, when you're coming down the interstate and you look at these bluffs and you see flowers, grass growing between the rocks. But when the big rain came, that landslide, I mean the big flood came, then here comes everything down. So that's the,
It's the story.
life.
Yeah.
Life will, you know.
I see these cedar
I
trees
just thought
coming out
about
of the
that.
side of these, there's limestone rock, and the cedar trees coming out of the rock. And I said, what in the world? How can it exist there?
They're still cleaning up.
Yeah, still cleaning.
I'm just gonna throw this out here. And I'm not by any, I have the purplest, blackest thumb on the planet when it comes to raising things. But I've watched my parents and my grandparents who farmed and gardened and everything else. I think we need to take into account when we look at this, that we also need to look at the person who's planting, so to speak, planting a garden. Because you have to look at the soil and the soil content when you're planting stuff. So as people who are spreading God's word, we need to look at what we've got to work with and how to make it work.
And possibly understand a young adult or a young teenager that is just so gung-ho about the word, and think about grounding him and taking him and putting him to work and getting him to do more than just feel it, but
I think
think it.
also in the lines of what cultivation.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to nurture as well as ground.
Mm-hmm.
Two together, then you're going to have rocky.
Needs fertilizer and needs some other things, yeah.
Right.
Okay, great. Now, what about this third type soil? Anybody want to talk about the third type? Where's the you in that? Where's the human person in that? Cynthia? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No.
Go ahead.
No.
All right, Cynthia, go ahead.
Well, this is the one that is sown among the thorny weeds and strong weeds, and they all come up together, but eventually the seed will get choked out by the thorns and the strong weeds. And that's a person probably, I would say, that doesn't realize the necessity of setting themselves apart from those weeds and thorns, from sin, from the world. And you're going to get choked out by the strength of the devil.
Yeah, the key is we live in a world that's got thorns. I mean, we can't help it. It's there. Yeah. And these, what? What's the thorns?
The devil, sin.
The devil pulling us away. How? In this particular instance, what are the thorns doing?
Choking it out.
Choking. So what's that? What are things that choke our faith?
Sin.
Hmm?
Sin.
Sin? What particular kind of sin is he involved with here?
He's talking about the cares of the world and the riches that are deceitful. But the thing is that each one looks identical, and you can't necessarily, by looking at them, separate them as wheat or wheat. And so they look like a Christian, if you will, but they have got up into the thorns of this life that they have been contaminated, and we really don't see that as much. And so I think if we miss that point, is that they all look really similar. but they have those thorns mixed in with them until you go to harvest them.
Right.
It's hard to separate.
It involves our, I guess you saw, commitment, our focus, the fact that we're start looking around and we start looking at other things and we start seeing all these valuable material things, and we lose sight of what is really important. So those weeds, those things that are in there, those thorns, are basically the person has lost his focus, and he's not thinking about what he's doing anymore. He's thinking about, oh, I see that, I want that. I see that, I want that. You know, loses focus, not committed, not fully committed.
Point when he talks about, you know, as they grow together, the thing about it is those root structures still have a chance to interlock with one another. You know, even from the good seed and the bad seed.
Right.
And so if you were to go in there and tear those weeds out, then you're going to pull up the good seed in the process. So that's something we got to think about when it comes to the harvest time.
Yeah, if we could, we would clean all those thorns out. We would clean that ground, but we're not allowed to. We got to live in this world. We're not allowed to just remove all temptation. That's not something we're allowed to do. All right, what about good ground? Last one. Jared?
Before I go to good ground, I think it is important to know that we often focus on the seed among the thorns, and when we apply that portion of the parable, a lot of times we want to apply this idea of, well, that seed should have known better than to be among those thorns. And that's a very, what's a good way to put that? That's kind of like, you know, whipping ourselves on the back a little bit, right? It's true, absolutely. And I think that the beauty of this parable is it can be viewed in multiple layers, right? But at the same time, even if you throw good seed, great seed that has potential to produce grain 100-fold, like the next seed does, and it's surrounded by thorns, it can be choked out. And I think it's important to understand that not everybody who's choked out chose to be choked out, right? The world will crush you because Satan wants to crush you. And I think it's very important for us when we look at a brother or sister who is struggling and being crushed by the world to not fall into that immediate feeling of, well, they should have known better. And start to kind of almost blame the victim a little bit. I'm not saying that they are a victim, because there's a lot of times in which we choose to be among the thorns, right? There's a lot of times in which we don't separate ourselves out. But there's times where pity and compassion need to be there. We need to try and rescue our brothers and sisters that are among those thorns out, right?
Right. We are here 3 or 4 hours a week. We may prepare for our lessons. We may prepare another couple hours, but the rest of the time, we're not there, and it's all over. You go to work, you go restaurants, everywhere you go, the world's there, and we cannot avoid it.
Well, I mean, let's see. I would use so. Alan, our brother Alan, goes to Vietnam and works with Christians there, and you have people that are disowned by their entire family for coming to Christ, right? And their family and the religious functions of their family and their culture are the thorns in that instance, and they're choking them out and can really discourage them. And again, this is just because this parable can be multi-layered, right? Christ can apply to us on different layers. So I'm not saying that it is wrong to interpret that portion as there are times when we choose to allow ourselves to be surrounded by thorns. That's a completely valid understanding here. But I think that the other understanding is also to have compassion on those that are being choked out by the thorns.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they don't choose to be that.
Yeah. talked to a man that worked in the Philippines, and he said some of the islands are completely controlled by the Muslims, and if you go to a church and attend a church, you come home and find out your job is gone. You've been fired because they control the jobs. So it's that kind of deal. I mean, you live in a world that is trying to tear you apart.
And I would not. Let me clarify that I'm not, because I do think that in, what is it, verse 22 or wherever, it talks about the cares of the world and the deceitful riches of the world choke the word and proves unfruitful, right? So it is entirely acceptable to understand that and to say that we allow that to happen plenty of times. But even that statement still, I think, leaves room for saying that it is multifaceted there. Now,
I have to make a correction. I wasn't trying to speed you up, Q, but I was talking about the wheat and the tares.
Right.
I studied on that, and I got too excited about that one, so I left and saw another one, so I apologize.
Yeah, I said that last night too, because I thought we might get there, because they're very much related. But anyway, what about the good soil? Where is that? What is that? The people with receptive hearts, and we're talking not just emotion. There's more than, they give more than emotion. Yeah, they give that commitment. They give that focus. They have a goal and they have that in mind. And they tend not to look to the right or the left. They keep their eye on the goal. Okay? Any other comments about the good soil? So we want to be that fourth kind of soil. And we need to work towards being that kind of commitment and that kind of focus. Yes, this is church.
You know, we need to be careful because the devil is really after us too.
Oh yeah, he is there.
We're just there, you know. We don't have to watch because he's there after the good, strong ones too.
Yeah, what does Paul say? Take heed lest you fall. You think you're standing, you're thinking you're in a good place, and all of a sudden, something gets you. Yeah, take heed lest you fall. All right. What about the last thing he says, to check and see if there is, and we want to stay away from the idea of overworking the parable, taking it where it doesn't belong. But sometimes there's a side lesson. Sometimes there's something in the parable that sparks a little lesson, like a side lesson or a secondary lesson. Is there a side lesson in this one? He says there is. Anybody knows what it is?
Saved or lost. The people that are saved and that are lost.
People are saved, but they can be lost.
Yes.
Right? The phrase, what is it? Once saved, always saved? How does this parable show that's not necessarily so? What two types of soil show that a person can be saved but then be lost?
Rocky and thorny.
Yeah, the thorny ground and the rocky ground. Both of those show that these Christians, these are Christians who become Christians, but through something, it pulls them away. They can be lost. Jerry.
So two things about that. One, I think, first of all, when Christ is explaining the parable, he talks about the seeds being the word, and we're kind of more so receiving the word, right? So a lot of times when somebody believes in this idea of irrevocable salvation, what they're going to say in response to this parable is that the seeds that fell in the first three instances were never saved to begin with. So I think it would be dangerous to use this particular parable to argue against that doctrine. because it's very easy to say, well, no, they received it, but they never accepted it fully and were saved. It's a little bit insidious because then you're questioning what people's motives are and everything else, right? But that is typically the response.
Yeah, I've talked to many of those. In fact, it was the first girl I ever dated believed this. And it was like a stone wall. There was what ifs, and there was this, and there was that. And the fact that they really wasn't saved to begin with in the first place. So yeah, it's tough. It's tough. They have basically almost something to say no matter what you say. Because they have already decided up here that they like that doctrine. It's a good one. It's a good one. Once you're saved, that is very comforting doctrine. I can't be lost. And it's also one you can do just about anything you want to. Mark?
Well, just because these people take this stand, does that stand make those people right? Those people are actually taking God's, as Frank's dad used to say, they're whittling on God's end of the stick, and they're already assuming that that person wasn't saved to begin with. Well, how many preachers have we known that's fell off the truck, as we say, or those who have gone bad? They started out great, they were working great, Satan snatched them out. Okay, so were they saved before? I'll leave that at that. And even though that person may disagree and say, well, they were never saved to begin with, ask God that question.
Yeah. The only time I was able to get across anything to anyone on this topic was using Simon, the sorcerer, when Philip talked to him. And both Philip was fooled, whoever wrote the book was fooled, whoever the Holy Spirit was telling the writer what to say, he was fooled. If that Simon did not understand and did not believe and was not a Christian and was not saved, everybody was fooled. And it just doesn't make any sense. And it says he was in danger of hellfire at the end of it because of what he thought he could do. So I always go to Simon. That's the only way I've ever made a dent in anyone with that. Now, some of you may have other ways to get that point across, but that's the one I always go to. Anyone else? Okay. Going over the next lesson, let's hit another parable. The next one, the parable of tares. We've already talked a little bit about it. Would like someone to read, and you may have to skip around on this one. Well, we can have two readers as we did before. It's in Matthew chapter 13, 24 through 30. Somebody would read that, and then somebody else prepare to read 36 through 43. So first, 24 through 30. Would somebody read those 6 verses? Okay. Thank you, Jerry.
Starting at 24 of Matthew
13 and go through 30.
Jesus told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. While everyone was sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. When the wheat sprouted up and formed heads, then the weeds also appeared. The owner's servants came to him and said, "Sir, didn't you sow good seed in your field? Where then did these weeds come from?" "An enemy did this," he replied. The servants asked him, "Do you want us to go and pull them up?" "No," he answered, "because while you are pulling the weeds, you may uproot the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. At that time I will tell the harvesters, first collect the weeds and tie them in bundles to be burned, then gather the wheat and bring it into my barn."
Okay. All right. So somebody want to read 36, which is 36 through 40. I mean, I lost my place. Yeah, 36 to 43. That is the explanation of the parable. Thank you, Philip.
36, you say?
Yeah, 36 through 43.
Then Jesus sent the multitude away and went into the house, and his disciples came to him, saying, Explain to us this parable of the tares of the field. And he answered and said to them, He who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, the good seeds are the sons of the kingdom, but the tares are the sons of the wicked one. The enemy who sows them is the devil. The harvest is at the end of the age, and the reapers are the angels. Therefore, as the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so it will be at the end of this age. The Son of Man will send out his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all things that offend and those who practice lawlessness, and will cast them into the furnace of fire. There will be wailing and gnashing of teeth. And the righteous will shine forth as the sons in the kingdom of their fathers. And he who has ears, let him hear.
Okay. Now, what's the circumstances? What's the context? Is there a change in where he is and who he's talking to? No, this is the same crowd. In fact, he finishes up explaining the soils and goes right into this one. I mean, he finishes up about the good soil and about it bearing such good fruit, and then he goes straight into a new one. So he's talking to the same group, and what about this parable? How does it fit with the parable of the soils? Same situation.
Cast those good seed, which is, the gospel.
Right. But he's making a little extension. He's going a little bit further.
But then he talks about the devil coming in. I mean, he's more specific.
Right. Yeah. And there is indication of a final judgment here where the other one didn't get quite that far. Okay. So, now, context. What about what is the main lesson? As Phil was reading about the explanation of the parable, what is the main lesson?
You better be listening.
You better be listening.
You better be listening. When it's over, it's over.
Right. You're going straight to the end where he's going to, what did he do with the tares? What is he going to do with them?
Burn them up.
He's going to pull them up and burn them up. In fact, he wraps them in bundles and he takes them and puts them on fire. At my house, I got some of these decorative grasses, and during the winter they turn brown. Well, I always read you're supposed to cut them off in around February. So my wife and I go out there and we cut them off. We put them on the fire, and they go up like fast. I mean, it's like instant burning. It's almost like gasoline, what they catch and burn up. But anyway, so yes.
I think the parallel we can see in both is growth. As verse 23 talks about being fruitful. You also see here just a different setting where you have the wheat, but the wheat continues to be wheat. It continues to be fruitful until the time that it is harvested. It never shrinks, goes back, but continues its growth.
Yeah, it comes forward, and they're able to see then when it bears fruit the difference between the tares and the wheat. They can see the grains of wheat on the wheat and know that's what it is, where the tares apparently look the same way. They've got the same leaf structure, but it's indistinguishable until the wheat starts throwing the wheat heads on the ends of the wheat plants. And as a farmer right down the road, journeyman who plants wheat occasionally the winter wheat, and you can see that almost heaviness that's up at the top of the plant where it kind of bends over. It's got a ton of grain on the end of it. All right, let's see. Where are we in this parable? Where are we in the parable? The good seed. The seed that's actually wheat. Well, what about the ground then? In this parable?
It's good ground. It's good ground.
It's good ground, but is the ground the church? Here? No, the ground is not the church. That would be a misapplication, taking what he said and applying the first parable to the second parable. In this one, the ground is the what? It's not the church. The world. So he's changed metaphors, I guess. And then now he's using a little slightly different. So we got to realize that the ground here is not the church. The ground is the world. And both are growing in it. All right. So is there an extra lesson? That's the last thing on the parable of tares. Is there a side lesson?
I believe as Christians we have to be careful where we go that we don't get corrupted by evil companions. We don't hang around the wrong people that they would rub off on us. So we could be rooted, so we could also be on the way. By being around the wrong people, doing the wrong things, going to the wrong places. It's not once planted always, not come up.
That's right, that's right. But what about the end of this? Is there a side lesson in the end of this?
You're talking about the parables after we talked about
The end of the tares, the judgment.
There is an end.
There is an end.
Painful.
What about plants? Both of them will be pulled up, right, for different reasons. One will be pulled up to put in bundles and thrown in the fire. The other one will be pulled up to take his fruit, right? Now, what is he saying? The doctrine is that this belies. It can't be, you can't have the way he's explaining judgment and some other doctrine that we presently know that people feel. Yeah, he brings up premillennialism. He's saying in premillennialism, there's going to be a rapture where the good people, the good folks, are going to be ripped up, taken up to heaven. What about the wheat? What about the tares? Supposedly, they're left here on earth. That is the explanation of a rapture, and he says it doesn't fit the parable. What Jesus is trying to teach, in far as judgment, that's not the way it works. Now, personally, I saw another one. That's just me. I don't know. But, well, first, is there any comments on that one? You think that's a fair side lesson? Jesus is teaching that they're going to be pulled up at the same time, right? Not separately.
It agrees with other things that we find that are being written later by the Apostle Paul, by Peter, of what Jesus says here versus the premillennialist thought, which doesn't really match to anything that we really find in the New Testament.
Yeah, but this question is not dying here. It's going to be asked and asked and asked. It goes down, and like you said, Paul and Peter both explain this the best that they can, and it's pretty clear. Everybody's going to be pulled up at the same time.
And as you look at the ones he's speaking to, I mean, you know, he's standing here in a boat on a beach, common folks. How would they understand it to take it home? And that's the way they would understand it. They would not understand it in a way that would be in the thought of premillennialism. It just will not work no matter how you try to show it.
Doesn't fit. All right, one other one I thought. Jared, go ahead.
St. Augustine gave a sermon about this, or wrote a sermon. He wrote a sermon about this, and I really liked his kind of secondary lesson or secondary application of it. He says, "Oh, you Christians whose lives are good, you sigh and groan as being few among many, few among very many. The winter will pass away, the summer will come. The harvest will soon be here. The angels will come who can make the separation, who cannot make mistakes. I tell you of a truth, my beloved, even in these high seats there is both wheat and tare, and among the laity there is wheat and tares. Let the good tolerate the bad. Let the bad change themselves and imitate the good. Let us all, if it may be so, attain to God. Let us all, through his mercy, escape the evil of this world. Let us seek after good days, for we are now in evil days. But in the evil days, let us not blaspheme, so that we may be able to arrive at the good days." I appreciate that lesson as well, that yes, you have the wheat and the tares, but let the wheat be an example for the tares, because it's a parable, but weeds can't turn into wheat, but people can turn from evil back to good.
Yeah.
And we are amongst each other.
Yeah, we're amongst each other, and the one that I thought was good, what did the landowner say? He said, "Don't pull up." Yet there are some religions, I don't know, there is a religion that says if they don't turn to our religion, then let's kill them all. Kill the infidels. I don't see this parable at all allowing that. Of course, we wouldn't allow it anyway, but the very point of this parable is to leave them in there with them and not kill everybody else that doesn't believe. Okay, thank you for your comments. We'll pick up on the next parable, which is the parable of mustard seed.